Hi, this is Dennis Gage, and welcome to a special Legendary Chevys home video edition of My Classic Car. Over the years, I've had the pleasure of traveling the country to cover many of the greatest Chevys to ever come out of Detroit. During the next hour or so, you'll see the original segments that aired on My Classic Car and hear my observations as we take a look back. You'll be treated to some truly awesome cars, like the Cheetah and a Z28 Trans Am Racer, as well as some very special Corvettes and Camaros. Plus, there are unique segments on Bill Mitchell, Zora, Arkus-Duntov, and much more. So sit back and revel in the bow tie bliss. In 1970, Chevrolet did away with the 400 cubic inch limitation for intermediate model cars, allowing a legend to be born. The Chevelle SS with the LS6 engine option. I've always been impressed with the incredible mix of power and macho looks of these cars. This sweet little number is owned by Dan Jensen, and I caught up with him in Michigan to get an up-close look at one of the most sought-after Chevelles ever produced. Well, we're here on a chilly morning in Michigan with a very hot car, a 1970 Chevelle LS6. Probably the ultimate Chevelle, and its lucky owner Dan Jensen. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis.
What a gorgeous car.
Yeah, it is.
And pretty much the ultimate Chevelle, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is considered the ultimate Chevelle by many muscle car enthusiasts, being rated at 450 horsepower, 1 year only.
Yeah. Now, you actually got this out of Floyd Garrett's Muscle Car Museum, is that right?
That's right. I happened to be down to Floyd's with a friend of mine. We were delivering a restored Judge down there, and we were just taking a tour of the museum, and one of the last cars we looked at happened to be this LS6, and Floyd happened to mention to my friend that it was for sale.
And lo and behold.
And I happened to open my mouth saying I'd be interested in it, and a few months later Floyd was on the phone saying, I've got to clear out some LS6s, would you be interested? And I said, you betcha.
Now, who did the restoration on this, Dan?
A gentleman by the name of Gilbert Propes. He does a lot of Floyd's cars and probably a lot of the Chevys around the country. He's probably the foremost Chevy
Does
restorer.
fine work. Now,
excellent work.
It's a gorgeous car. It's kind of a plain Jane LS6, though. I mean, in the way it's optioned.
Yes.
You've got a bench seat in it.
Mm-hmm. This car, basically, if you're looking at what options were checked off on the option list, it's got your base equipment to be an LS6 car. The only thing over and above that was the optional sport stripe, the sport stripes and the AM radio. Now, if you ordered column induction, which this car does not have, it would have come with the sport stripes. You wouldn't have to sit down and order it separately.
But column shift?
Column shift, yeah. If you didn't get the bucket seats or the 4-speed, obviously your shift, if you've got an automatic without bucket seats, your shifter came on the column. And this doesn't have gauges or anything, so it's just idiot lights. Street racer. Street racer. That's what it was ordered to be, as a matter of fact.
Well, let's look at the monster, the beast under the hood. The 454 turbojet. 450 advertised horsepower in an era when everybody was lowballing their horsepower figures for insurance purposes.
Yeah, I know. They kind of flew in the face of what was going on at the time. I don't know why they did it either. And probably a lot of people speculate as to the reason. But yeah, 450 horsepower, and that's actually what they got out of these engines on dynos. I've got a test that verifies that, and it was really kind of surprising.
And pretty much a built engine top to bottom. I mean, solid lifters.
It was ready for the street racers and for the drag racers. Just pull off the air cleaner and do a little tuning and put some headers on, and man, you were flying. Polycarb, about 800 CFM. Of course, the aluminum intake, the 44s came with a low-rise version. Solid lifter cam, 11-to-1 compression, pop-up forged pistons.
4-bolt mains.
4-bolt mains, yes. Everything. Everything that the street racer wants.
Special radiator, big battery.
Yes. The minimum to make it an LS6 required you to get a heavy-duty battery, and if you had the 410 gears, it came with a heavier-duty radiator, I should say.
Now, like you said, most of them came with cowl induction, but this one's unique in that it's got this particular air cleaner.
If you didn't order the cowl induction, you either got, I think the early cars came with the open element air cleaner, which people are used to seeing when Chevy hoods are open on their big motors. But I don't know, maybe for noise reasons and pass-by noise regulations they were coming out with at the time, they probably had to quiet the thing up a little bit. And so you see this, this is a rare dual snorkel setup. I think less than 200 of LS6 cars came in this format.
Well, these babies were built to burn up tracks.
That's what this one can do.
Well, let's burn one up.
Okay, I'm ready.
As we pulled to the line at Mid-Michigan Motorplex, that sense of excitement came over me. Dan was feeling it too. This was his first chance to see what this muscle car legend would really do on the strip right off the museum floor. We tripped the timing lights with a 1440 at just over 95 miles per hour. Not bad for a totally stock LS6 equipped with Cruiser 310 gears and yours truly on board.
That was a 1427 at 96.92, so almost 97 miles an hour.
On the final run, we gave our camera van almost an eighth of a mile head start in an attempt to give you all at home a new perspective on speed. The result was pretty dramatic. It only took us a few seconds to overtake the camera crew as we posted an impressive 1412 at almost 99 miles per hour. This time is amazingly close to what Motor Trend magazine recorded in a similar LS6 back in '69.
Had you not been in the car, that could have been a 13-second run.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been as much fun.
Oh, no. It's always fun to talk to somebody when you're drag racing.
Oh, by the way, our camera van crew finally crossed the finish line with a respectable time of 26:50 at just over 45 miles per hour. What a car.
That was a lot of fun.
Dan, thanks for the ride in this time machine.
You're most welcome. I'm ready to do it again.
It's been a blast.
It has for me too.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Everyone agrees that the Camaro is one of Chevrolet's greatest muscle cars. But the Camaro would not have packed the punch it did without the development of Chevy muscle in the early 60s. The benchmark year for the bowtie fans was 1961, when they unleashed one of those rare engines that actually overshadowed the car it was bolted into. The hot Impalas and Bel Airs were powered by it, drag racers loved it, and the Beach Boys put it to rhyme. She's real fine, my 409. We're here today in Southern California with Robert Janae. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Robert's a photojournalist in the automotive world and owner of this real fine 409. Robert, this is a 62 Bel Air, right?
That's right, 62 Bel Air, two-door sedan, powered by the dual-quad 409 motor.
And how long you had it?
I bought it in 1990 and restored it over about a 3-year time period.
Now you've made a few modifications, we'll get to those. It's mostly stock.
It's, for all intents and purposes, just about the same car I would have driven on the streets of Woodward when I grew up in Detroit.
So what makes it a Bel Air versus a Biscayne versus an Impala?
Well, the Biscayne was a very base level, had no chrome trim on the side. The Bel Air had chrome trim around the windows, chrome trim down the side, reveal molding around the taillights and the dual taillights.
Which was Bel Air Biscayne.
Bel Air Biscayne. Impala went to the 3 lights and had a chrome cove as well.
And I guess the tailpipe coming out the side was pretty much the standard back then, but on the 409 you had duals, right?
Had dual exhaust, right. That's exactly where they exited from the factory.
Well, this car really is a sleeper. I mean, this, except for that 409 Insignia up there, this looks like Grandma's car.
Yeah, it's something that an elderly relative would have to go get groceries at the store and pick up their prescriptions with.
Except this one could turn the quarter in what kind of time?
In the Winter Nationals was won by Don Nicholson driving a 62 Bel Air. He ran 12 6s at 109 and was the stock eliminator in 1962.
That's pretty fast in 62.
Pretty fast.
What would the sticker price have been optioned like this?
This particular car would have stickered for probably just under $3,000 with the engine, transmission, and Bel Air package.
Now it's pretty much got the standard Bel Air interior.
Right, I've added a Hurst shifter, which serious drag racers used in the early 60s, and I've added a Gage package because there were no real-world gauges for the engine. The TAC is a factory unit. Chevrolet added those in 1961 to the Super Sports. It was an add-on. Chevrolet wanted to put a TAC in there, couldn't integrate it into the dash in any way, so went to the Hot Rod magazine and bought a bunch of Sun tachometers and put them on.
I see Dino Don's signature in there. Is that real?
Yeah, I had the chance to meet him a year ago. I interviewed him for a book I was working on, and he was nice enough to come out and sign the radio delete plate on my car. Just super guy, was a great interview.
Wow. Well, now The real star of this car is under the hood, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what made the Beach Boys sing about, and that's what made these things run so fast on the drag strip.
Well, we've got the air cleaner off now, so we can get a better look at those carbs, but those are dual carter AFBs.
Yeah, they're about 500 CFM each. The 409 horsepower option had 2. If you bought the 380, which is a single horsepower 409, it had a slightly larger single carter AFB.
That's right, though. It's 409 cubic inch, 409 horsepower.
That's right. The extra carburetor gave them the extra horsepower. Progressive linkage. It runs off the rear carburetor during regular cruising. You stand on it, the front carburetor opens up, and you go fast.
Speedometer goes up, gas gauge goes down.
That's it. That's it. The usual practice with a muscle car.
Now, otherwise, she's pretty bare up here. There's no power steering.
No power steering, no power brakes.
Now, there's also no battery.
I've put the battery in the trunk. Again, it's a little trick that drag racers used to use in the early 60s to get more weight over the right rear wheel. I've also added an alternator. Again, this is a driver. I use it quite frequently. I put on about 3,000 miles a year. The fun is in driving one of these.
Absolutely, that's what they were built for. Now on the fender well there, what's that box? That's tack related, is
That's the sending unit for the tachometer. Early 60s technology was kind of awkward and archaic, so they had the tachometer was a 2-piece unit, the gauge inside the car and then the sending unit.
Well, like you say, she's a driver.
Let's go
drive
for a
it.
drive? All right, let's go.
Or let's fire this baby up. Well, this engine was kind of notorious for overpowering the rest of the drivetrain, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I talked to Don Nicholson, he said, you know, I never broke a motor, but a lot of transmissions, a lot of rear ends. And the motor is pretty strong. Rev's really good, pulls really strong.
Does throw you back. I can see it on Woodward Avenue, you know? I just get that Woodward feel. I've always liked the big block Impalas. When we decided to cover one on the show, I picked the 67 and the search began. As it turned out, we found a great example. A 427 Impala SS that was tucked away in a small garage in a quiet San Jose neighborhood. Owner Tom Marino spends plenty of hours in his garage listening to tunes and polishing a piece of 60s muscle car history. Well, it's a chilly day in San Jose, but we're here with a really hot car, a 67 Chevy 427 Impala, and its lucky owner, Tom Marino. Tom, welcome to the show.
Dennis, thank you for having me.
This is a great car. It's a 4-speed car. They didn't make many of these.
No, Dennis, they only made 2,124 of these.
Wow, and I don't imagine there's many of them left.
No, I don't think that there are.
Now, what drove you to seek one of these out?
Well, a friend of mine in high school, his uncle had one, and occasionally he'd let us take it for a ride.
In high school, you were driving one of these?
and I fell in love with the car. Always wanted one.
Where'd you find it?
Actually, I found the car going through Hemmings, and I found it here in California, and we took a ride out and take a look at it.
Man, close to home. Now, this is a unique car. I've always loved the body style. It was 1 year only, and it was different. I mean, the 65s and 6s look kind of alike, 68s and 9 look kind of alike, but this was the only year with this swept look.
Yeah, Dennis, it does have the long body lines in it, and I really like that.
Yeah, and it's big.
It is a big car.
It's a big car. Now, how about the interior in a 427 Impala SS? What all do you have in there?
Well, Dennis, it came with a factory tachometer on the dash, the bucket seats, and the center console, of course, for the shifter.
But other than that, it's really pretty much an Impala.
It is.
It didn't have a lot of detailing. There's some badging on the front fender, a little bit on the back deck there, but really what gave this baby away was that hood.
Yes. The hood is nice.
And it was only for the 427 SS, right?
That's correct.
So the 396 SS, which was available that year, didn't have this, had a stock hood? Or
That's right. It was just a factory flat
Now,
hood.
I got to believe that one of these hoods, they're probably getting hard to find.
Very hard to find. I've seen them for as much as $1,500 when you can find one.
Yeah, wow. Whew, car's gone, but the hood's still there.
Yeah.
Well, let's look under this unique
Okay.
hood. At that big, bad 427 turbojet 385 horse. Man, what a monster.
Yes, it is a big block, Dennis.
Now, what's different between this 427 and the one in the Vet?
The one on the Vet has the Holly carburetor, which I believe gives it a little bit more horsepower.
Squeezed out another 5 horse?
Another 5
390?
horse out of it.
Now, you've done this all pretty stock looking. I mean, you've done it all stock, haven't you?
I've tried to keep it as original, as much original as possible.
And how much work did you have to do? It was painted, I guess, but...
It was painted. We went through and we detailed the engine compartment, the firewalls, repainted the block.
Man, but it's like back in time. Now, these were also notorious for neck snap and acceleration. What do you say we snap a couple necks?
Sounds good, Dennis.
All right.
Let's take it for a ride.
Ooh, sounds good.
Hang on to your hat there, Dennis.
You got it. So what are your plans? What else are you going to do to it?
I'd like to put the smog back on.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Well, you're lucky
seriously considering
you've got that
doing
equipment. That's probably some of the most valuable equipment off a car like this, because everybody just jerked it off.
Yeah, and got rid of it.
I always love the sound of these too. They're really a good sounding car. There wasn't a heck of a lot of badging on this that really showed it as a 427 though, was there?
No, there's not, and it's very unique as compared to a standard, a regular Impala. It's quite different.
Yeah, these were very strong cars. And it's a pause traction car, right?
Yeah, it's got a posi. It's got a 331 gear ratio.
It had a heck of a trunk too, man. You could put several people in that trunk.
You could definitely get several people into the drive-in in that trunk.
Yeah, it's a drive-in movie car. Pretty cool, Tom. Nice car.
Thank you, Dennis.
I'd shake your hand. I don't think I can reach across there, though. This monster. This is beautiful. Now I want one. I think red, too. I think red's probably what I'd go with. What do you think?
Sounds good.
I remember the 67 Camaros the way most people do, as a worthy challenger to the Mustang. In fact, right out of the box, Chevrolet raised the stakes by offering a big block in the Camaro. Ford kept pace by offering the first big block Mustang. When we decided to do a feature on one of the early big block Camaros, we stumbled upon this rare Royal Plum 396 SS convertible. Well, today we're in Macomb, Illinois with Mike Henniger. Mike, how you doing?
How's it going, Dennis?
Oh, it's going great. Love this car. 67 Camaro convertible SS 396. I mean, this is a monster.
You bet. It's got the 375 horse 396.
And it's a pretty rare car to begin with, right? How many of these were made?
There was 1,138 cars made with this engine in it, and very few convertibles, I believe, probably less than 50.
Wow. Now this is also and as you have it listed, it's my rare one, isn't it?
It sure is. I believe it's one of a kind with the royal plum color.
It's a very unique color. I've never seen another Camaro with this. This was a stock color,
Yes.
all right? Well, I had a 67 GTO, same color scheme. It was, Pontiac called it plum mist, but it was almost exactly this color. Very rare for that car too. But it was a factory color. They just didn't sell many of them.
It wasn't very popular. I think it only was offered in '67 and never did come back any other year.
Well, it's odd because it changes colors on you. I mean, it's purple in the right light.
Yes, it is. It changes colors dramatically.
It gets kind of brown, gets kind of black. It's one of the early color change paints. They didn't even intend it. Well, now, how long you had this car?
I've had it for 13 years. I bought it off the original owner right here in Macomb.
Oh, wow, so it's a hometown car?
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
that is really neat. Well, it looks like a pretty highly optioned car. Did you have to restore it, or what kind of shape was it?
It was in really good shape when I bought it. It's got all the original body panels on it. The interior is mostly original except for the seats and the door panels.
That's a pretty trick interior. Is that the Deluxe?
That is the Deluxe interior.
And what did Deluxe come with?
It came with the molded door panels, the accent stripes on the seats, the chrome steering wheel.
Wow. Man, this is original. You still got the Muncie 4-speed shifter in
Yeah,
there.
who would ever thought they'd leave that in there?
Most of those were pulled out pretty quick, weren't
They
they?
usually replaced them with Hurst shifters pretty
right.
quick, but
Nice gauge package, and you've also got the
6,000 RPM tack.
And
That was only offered on the 375 horse cars and the Z28s.
Oh, and all because they were higher revving, solid lifter engine.
Exactly.
They got the red line tires on it. Now this also has, does this car have disc brakes?
It has factory disc brakes, which was the first year they were offered on a passenger car, in '67.
There can't be too many options this car doesn't have.
Not really. It's got most everything. It's got the highest horsepower motor in it that was offered.
Man, well, and speaking of that high horsepower motor,
Would you like to take a look
let's
at it?
have a look. That's always been a favorite of mine. Oh,
I just
yeah.
love these big motors.
And big it is, 396 cubic inches, 375 horsepower, and it really cranked all of that out, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was really underrated. They used to, in '65, they were rated at 4 1/4 horse.
So they were lowballing it in that era a lot of times.
Just for insurance
yeah,
purposes.
For insurance purposes. Now, what all came with this engine, with the 375 horse?
That came out with the chrome package on the air cleaner and the valve covers. It had the aluminum intake with the 780 Holley carburetor, the 11-to-1 compression ratio,
Man, 4-bolt main?
4-bolt mains.
Yeah, oh yeah. Now this, but you said this has got a 273 rear end?
Yes, that's a
What
very unusual combination to
What
have
an
that.
odd combination.
Have this high horsepower engine with the 273 rear end.
So you could, I mean, you can get some high turnpike speeds with that. It's not really a
Exactly.
drag car.
Yeah, the original owner told me that he had it clear back to 0 on the speedometer on a desert highway one night.
Well, that's probably well in excess of 120 miles an hour.
Exactly. It'll
Wow.
run 120 miles an hour in third gear.
Man, what can you do in first?
60 or 70.
What a weird combo. So you can't drag it, but you can still cruise it, right?
It'll go fast too.
Well, let's go fast.
Let's do it.
All right. Oh yeah, bumblebee stripe, red line tires. I'm back in time. Ooh, healthy sound too.
You bet.
What a wonderful afternoon. Sunshine, pleasant temperatures, and a ride in this primo Camaro. Mike's pride in his automobile was very evident as we cruised the back roads near his hometown. So what's the whole drivetrain setup here? You got the 396, 375 horse.
It's got the M21 4-speed with 273 gears. Rather unusual combination.
I'll say, and you've got the disc brakes.
Yeah, that was the first year that they were offered on any passenger car.
That's got to make this even more rare because not a lot of people opted for those as an option.
It was
did
a
they?
new thing.
And was there something special about the Camaro that that you always wanted one, or how'd you come by this?
Well, actually, I was restoring another Camaro convertible when I bought this car, and I heard through a friend about it, and I went and looked at it and realized it was a 375 horse 67 convertible, and I had to buy it.
So you just knew it was a rare car.
I knew it was a rare car as soon as I saw it.
It was a must-have type.
So I was like, I couldn't resist.
Now, when you were looking into how rare this thing was, I mean, did you kind of look around the country and talk to a lot of folks? Or?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of car collectors, like out on the East Coast, and I've visited with quite a few people all over the country.
And what did they tell you about it?
Well, just a handful of them around. Possibly, close as I could find out, there's only like 4 or 5 cars like this.
And when you say like this, you mean convertibles with this engine? And
Yeah, convertible 375 horse.
oh, Mike, nice ride. Hey, would you kick it one time?
I sure would. I love that sound.
Oh yeah, big block rumble. Tell you, great car. You know, I might just have to get me one of these.
Where are you going to find another one just like it?
Well, I want this one actually.
Okay.
All I need is a big check, right?
That's right.
Big check for the big block.
That's right.
Ooh, but plum, I gotta have. It's very nice.
Thank you.
Cool car, cool car.
Thank you very much.
In 1963, Bill Thompson and his partner set out to build a Cobra killer. With a little help from Chevrolet, they built a couple dozen snake tamers called Cheetahs. But just when the Cheetah was starting to get a name for itself using its great speed and handling, fate dealt a cruel blow. The team's dreams literally went up in smoke when Thompson's shop burned to the ground. To compound problems, Chevrolet decided to drastically reduce their racing involvement, pretty much ending Cheetah's short but promising racing life. When I got a chance to see one of these powerful felines for the first time, I was blown away by its sleek lines and daring driveline layout. Well, today we're down in Florida at the Sebring International Raceway with Skip Cannell. Skip, how you doing?
Hi, Dennis. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you, Skip, and your beautiful 64 Cheetah. This is one of the most exotic race cars ever built. It is a wild machine.
Well, thank you.
And the only thing wilder about the car, I think, is the story behind it. Tell me the story of the Cheetah.
Well, in 1963, it was apparent to GM and that the Corvette was probably not going to stay competitive against the Cobras with Ford throwing their money in that direction. So I think they went to a Southern California speed shop guy by the name of Don Edmonds and Bill Thomas, and they put together a package for Chevrolet that they felt would represent them well on the racetrack.
I mean, it was built to be a Cobra killer.
It was built to be a Cobra killer. What they needed to do was to get the weight down, weight even below the Cobra, and they succeeded in doing that by about 500 pounds.
Man, well, it's so wild looking. It is so short. What's the wheelbase on this thing?
It's 90 inches of wheelbase, and obviously with that short a wheelbase, in order to get a mid-engine type configuration, they had to shove the engine so far back in the chassis that there's actually no room for a drive shaft. So the transmission is actually plugged right into the Corvette differential.
Just with one U-joint, and we're coupled.
That's it. There's no drive shaft at all.
Man, well, that's so. From a geometry standpoint, you're sitting right in amongst everything, aren't you?
There's actually no configuration that would allow the driver to sit any closer. The half shaft from the rear end is right up against your backbone, and your feet are all the way up here, right underneath the set of headers.
That's a little scary, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you're right in the midst of all the mechanicals, but
in the mix, huh?
But it gave them a weight distribution of 52% on the back wheels, which obviously at that time with a front engine car was pretty exceptional.
Pretty cool. Now this car in '64 was clocked at over 200 miles an hour.
Right, at Daytona. Salyer had the car there at 220 at Daytona, and the car was so fast and packed so much air up underneath the car that it actually literally blew the doors off.
It blew its own doors off.
Right, it blew its own doors off.
Well, now, they were generating that kind of power and that kind of speed out of a small block Chev.
Yes.
Can we have a look at it?
Yes, 327.
327 block.
Right. And the block itself, Bill Thomas was quite famous in California as a Chevy guy. He was known as Mr. Corvette. In addition to that, he was also quite famous for Rochester fuel injection. And,
so this one was actually bored out from 327 to what?
This particular engine is 332. It's just a 30 overbore.
And it pumps out what kind of horse?
This is about 420 with a single air meter on it.
Wow. And they had a full race version that was what? Bored and stroked.
Yeah, stroked 3 3/4 of an inch, which gave him 377 cubic inches, and usually ran 2 air meters on top, about 520 horsepower.
Man, in a car that weighs, what is this? This
car with liquids in it actually scales out at about 1,650 pounds.
Phenomenal power to weight ratio.
Yeah, well, that's what made them so fast.
They're aptly named.
Yes.
Quick kitty, huh? The Cheetah.
Cheetah was the right name.
Well, we're here at this historic track with this piece of racing legend. What do you say we try and do a few laps with it?
Okay, let's have some fun.
Oh, yeah. Whoa, whoa, Skip. Bad Cheetah, bad Cheetah.
Thank you, Dennis. Good Cheetah.
Well, good Cheetah. One quick kitty.
Yep, it's meant for the track, and that's where it belongs.
Oh, what a trip. This was great. You made my day, Skip.
Okay,
Thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Ooh, me too. This beautiful 67 427 Stingray Coupe is one of the most unique vets in the world. Unique because of the way it was restored by David Burrows of Normal, Illinois. Burrows is probably the leading authority on factory-accurate Stingray restorations, or what he calls giving the car a natural factory look. He's been restoring Corvettes for more than 20 years and developed the Bloomington Gold standards back in 1978. The restoration of this Silver Pearl Corvette, which is owned by David Painter of Evansville, Indiana, took more than 5 years to complete. Burrows took possession of the car in 1989 and worked in his spare time to perform an incredibly meticulous and documented restoration. Each piece was carefully disassembled and restored to its natural factory condition, so there's plenty of overspray, and the factory markings have been reproduced in great detail. The chassis has several different finishes of black paint, and the fiberglass body is still rough in places. Burrows' restoration philosophy is simple. Make it the way the factory made it. No better, no worse. In Evansville, we recently reunited David Burrows with David Painter and his Stingray. I was anxious to get a close-up look at this incredible restoration. David, tell me how you guys came to know each other.
Well, I'd gotten to know David over the years through his involvement with Bloomington Gold Meat, and I'd thought for several years how neat it would be if he would consider taking on my car as a restoration project.
Well, and David, it was a big project. How did you choose to take it on?
It's huge. Well, if you're going to do a project like this, you have to have two things, essentially. Number one, an owner that's willing and patient and understanding and know how long it's going to take. And number two, you have to have an automobile that has the integrity to be able to do that. And we had both in this instance.
Great. Integrity of the car, integrity of the owner, great combo. Well, David, as the restorer of this, can you take me around and show me some of the fine points of a factory-accurate restoration?
Sure. Why don't we start with the outside, and we'll begin with some of the earmarks of the paint, and especially the door jambs.
Okay. Sounds great. The mission of a factory-accurate restoration is to put the car back the way it was, not the way we'd like it to have been. And in fact, you can even see that the paint isn't terribly shiny.
That's right. It's purposely done this way. And unlike a show car, the paint actually has orange peel in it, purposely put there, which results, of course, in a much less shiny appearance. The other thing to show how it was done authentically is we have left the door jambs unrestored. So you can see the glue marks up here, and you can see the join line where the body panel comes in contact with the door pillar. You can see it's rather crudely done, but left alone to be original. Also, on the outside and on the bottom of the car, in numerous places, like you'll see right here, there's no paint at all in many places on these old Stingrays because the factory just didn't get the guns under far enough to get a complete cover.
That's fascinating. Well, David, I'm sure there's some magic under the hood. Let's pop it and look at the big block.
All right, when you see under the hood, the viewers will probably notice it looks just like a lot of black as any other restoration would. But what's different, it has up to 4 to 5 different shades of black depending on who the supplier was of the paint made by the original manufacturer. Also, the valve covers have drip runs in them, again recreated from what the original ones looked like. We've also rewrapped the wiring harness and the configuration of it and actually put it back in the car with all the twists and turns exactly as the original one was taken out.
I imagine all the overspray is like it should be.
Precisely.
And this is an interesting mark here. It's not overspray, it isn't clearly masked. I'm sure it's original. How'd you do that?
I can't tell you exactly, but I followed how the factory did it. I was in the factory when it was done and saw how it was done and recreated their process.
That's really something. Well, let's look at the interior.
All right. We were really fortunate because the seats and the door panels were authentic and in marvelous condition. We did have to, however, replace the carpet.
Well, and what's this, David, an extra piece?
Well, this is one of 4 extra pieces that had to be cut to make the seats fit, and as the factory did, it's tossed back inside the car.
Well, I tell you, I'm dying to see the undercarriage. Let's put it up on a rack and have a look.
All right.
Well, we're under the car now. Why don't you point out some of the highlights?
All right. On the bottom side of our fender well, you'll see it's not nearly as shiny and pretty as you'd expect to see on a show car. This is done per factory. It has the original red prime and then black undercoating put over the top of that. Moving down into the chassis area here, you have some interesting contrasts. On the brake caliper and the steering knuckle, They have areas here that have been machined after they were plated, so you'll see bare metal contrasted against the paint. Over here in the chassis with the frame and the lower suspension arms, this is a different kind of coating, an asphalt coating, which contrasts in color with the sheet metal parts. These things can go all the way through the rest of the chassis. Another rather interesting little thing we did was when we greased the car, we didn't wipe it off. We left it just like the factory did it, so we have grease dripping off the various zerk fittings. So those add a little bit of character. It could go on all the rest through the rest of the chassis. Probably take a week to explain the whole thing, but this will give you some highlights.
Well, someday I want that week tour. Right now, I'd like to thank you for showing me what is probably the most factory original 67 Vette on the planet. I feel like I've been back in time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for joining us, David.
You bet.
It was a pleasure.
You bet.
There are many amazing people behind the cars we love, but Zora Arkus-Duntov somehow managed to put his soul in the Corvette. This is our pocket documentary about Zora, the father of the Corvette.
Zora Arkus-Duntov didn't design or engineer the first Corvette, but in the mid-1950s he helped save it from extinction. For this legendary accomplishment, and a long list of others, Zora is reverently known today as the godfather of the Corvette. Nowhere is this talented engineer's work more immortalized than in the National Corvette Museum. It only takes a few minutes in this Corvette shrine to begin to understand what an important role Zora's vision and talents played in the development of America's only true sports car. Zora was born in Belgium and raised in Leningrad. He was already well known in the automobile world when he was hired by GM in 1953. Initially a staff engineer, Zora soon became director of high performance at Chevrolet. His youthful energy, technical brilliance, and stubborn determination proved to be what the Corvette needed to survive. The conservative nature of management, unimpressive performance, and poor sales almost relegated the original Corvette to a footnote in automotive history. But a small group inside Chevrolet, led by Zora, fought to keep it alive. Over the next 20 years, Zora's engineering transformed the Corvette into a world-class sports car. His major innovations included the development of the independent rear suspension, fuel injection, the Duntov camshaft, and the design of several prototypes. Even today, he believes the next generation of Corvette should place the driver ahead of the engine.
Zora is part of the very fabric of Chevrolet. When you look beyond the Corvette itself and say, what makes Chevrolet great? He was the person, though, who was instrumental in marrying the small block engine and fuel injection to Corvette to make it a world-class sports car.
In early 1995, the National Corvette Museum honored Zora by celebrating his 85th birthday. Several hundred auto enthusiasts joined in the celebration. Zora even received a letter of congratulations from President Bill Clinton.
There is so much to Zora Duntov. I guess the truth of the matter is if you took the Corvette out of his life entirely, there's still an awful lot to Zora. He's worked on, he has patents for the hydraulic system on aircraft. He's worked on submarines, he's worked on locomotives, he's worked in military fashions. He was an Air Force pilot with the French Air Force. You know, the Corvette is an American icon, but Zora's the driving force behind it. He's the icon.
Zora passed away in April 1996, but his spirit lives on in every Corvette that rolls off the assembly line. Zora Arkus-Duntov, a classic engineer and father of the Corvette.
Bill Mitchell was the head of GM styling during the twilight of the golden age of the automobile. This is our pocket documentary on this amazing man.
Bill Mitchell went to work for General Motors in the late 1930s, working in their styling studio under the watchful eye of the legendary Harley Earl. In 1958, when Earl retired, Mitchell became head of GM's prestigious design studios. Over the next 20 years, he supervised the design of some of America's greatest cars. Those who worked with and then under him remember him as a colorful and outspoken leader with a knack for creating good designs.
You know, in the design business, you've got to be the style leader. And to be the style leader, you have to be on course with the style of the day, the way of life.
Bill Mitchell picked up where Harley Earl left off. he really went after the prize, and he may have run over a few people along the way. But the amazing thing is that he was usually right.
Bill Mitchell's career started quite early. It was centered around both art and the automobile. And he ended up with a job at Collier's. But the most important part was that the Collier brothers raced cars. And they invited him up to come up to the races with them. And at that point on, he was stuck. He drew pictures, and one of the pictures of one of these cars racing at you is the first emblem of the Sports Car Club of America. Collier brothers, who knew Harley Earl, finally arranged for an interview with him. This was 1935, and Bill was about 23 then. And Bill was chosen to run Cadillac Studio.
In design, there's a word we call vogue, and vogue means the acceptance of modern-day styling.
Mitchell's flair and his spirit in his designs were exactly right for the times that he lived through.
Bill Mitchell was in a transition era from the 50s, and the 50s were a flamboyant era, there's no doubt about it. But that wasn't what Bill wanted. Bill wanted an era of exquisite, tasteful cars, and he had to gradually merge into that. But as he went into the 60s, he got the things he really wanted, like the Toronado, the Riviera. Even the Stingray Corvette was an exotic shape, wasn't relying on any trim. That was the Bill Mitchell era, and all the designers were 100% with him and enjoyed it.
He moved at a rapid rate. There was no slow speed.
He was like a freight train going through. If you could hang on, you're on for the ride. If you couldn't, you weren't.
We knew exactly where we were going. We didn't make 5 or 6 models and go through a process of elimination. We strayed right on course because we knew the automotive industry needed a new look.
He was a great designer, and he stood for newness, and he stood for creativity, he stood for excitement in design.
The '63 Corvette Stingray is one of the major accomplishments of Bill Mitchell.
There are a lot of people that claim credit for the design of that. Nobody gets credit, in my opinion, except Bill Mitchell. He described exactly what he wanted, displayed a shaped body. He was there every day directing that design.
You would come in and show him something on a Corvette, and before he'd get in the room, he'd say, listen, don't flatter yourself on these Corvettes, kid. That's the one car I do around here.
He believed when he designed something, when we designed something, that was it. Don't question it, don't monkey with it, that's it. Take it or leave it.
You can't really understand what it was like, what a joy it was to work for a man like this. I couldn't wait to get to work. It was, I thought I died and going to heaven.
Bill Mitchell, bold, colorful, and a true classic designer.
I had the privilege of meeting Dave McLellan at the National Corvette Restorers Society meet in Lake Placid, New York. As chief engineer, Dave spearheaded the early engineering work on the C5 Corvette before his retirement from GM a few years ago. He took a few minutes to show me the revolutionary C5 chassis that he helped take from the drawing board to the showroom.
My first involvement with the Corvette started in 1974 with the first of the catalytic converter cars, the 75 model. And we went through a period about 5 years long where the performance of the Corvettes continued to deteriorate because of emissions and fuel economy requirements.
Those were dark days.
Those were dark days. And we were able to turn the corner by 1982. And basically what you'll find from an engineering perspective is the use of onboard electronics has taken us from that nadir back to being able to do cars like the ZR1 and the LT1. The ZR1 has a higher performance level than virtually any Corvette ever had, 180 plus miles an hour, 4 seconds 0 to 60.
Oh, it's stunning.
It's a stunning performer in all respects. In fact, we introduced it in Europe simply to make that point.
Well, this really involved an awful lot of things that had never been accomplished before, equations that have never been solved. to do the C5. Is that true?
That's the way I like to describe it. There's so many things that went into the C5. We learned to race the car again in the mid-'80s and applied that racing knowledge back into the production car.
Well, let's look at some of the fine points.
All right. The car starts with its structure, and that's the essence of how the car is put together. The structure consists of this continuous outer rail that's hydroforming. It goes from front to back of the car in one continuous piece. Central backbone is a roughly 8-inch by 10-inch deep box that runs through the entire passenger compartment and is tied in structurally to the outer rail at the front and at the rear with massive triangulated structures. And those structures are so massive that in the rear you can put the fuel tanks inside them, which they did.
Right in here?
Right in there. And the backbone, although you can't see it clearly here in this mock-up because things have been cut away, the backbone is a totally enclosed structure. The chassis is stuffed into the backbone, and then there's a lower plate that's bolted on with a myriad of small bolts in order to take it from what would be an open shoebox in terms of torsional stiffness to a very stiff closed box.
So the transmission actually in this car sets back
behind
here.
the seats, right. And the consequence of that was that the wheelbase increased from 96 inches to 104.5 inches. We originally thought it would have to be 105, but the guys were able to squeeze a ½ inch out of that and got it down to 104.5. But still, it's a long wheelbase, but within the same overall length.
And the design work actually on this began way back in...
We began actually in 1989. Coming off the ZR1 program, we were on a roll. We knew a lot, and we also knew there were some things that we didn't know how to do. And so we wrote all those down on a piece of paper and said, now how are we going to accomplish, all these additional items of delivering a ZR1 at standard Corvette prices, a stiff structure, entry egress, roominess, not weigh anymore. We knew we could solve the equation if we were willing to invest 700 pounds of ironmongering into the car.
Doesn't sound like Corvette
we were not willing to do that.
No. And this car totally comes in at about 3,400 pounds, is that right?
Yes,
still?
that's the mass of a C5 Corvette with its aluminum small block motor, which is also interesting. The Chevrolet small block is very historical. It goes back to the 55 Chevrolet and the 55 Corvette. The new motor has no parts in common with even the most recent generation LT1 motor, and it has the same bore center and a family history with the first Chevrolet V8, but it's a total modern rethinking of that engine, and it produces 345 net horsepower. The general manager of Chevrolet tells me it's really 350, so I'll share that with you, because he was proud of that. I don't know why they advertise it at 345 then, but that's their game.
Well, you've certainly made a huge contribution, and this is a great note to go out on.
Well, thank you.
C5. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us, David.
You're welcome, Dennis.
When the producers of the hit comedy series Cheers needed a vet for Ted Danson's character Sam Malone, one of the crew members had the perfect car. With a 427, 3 deuces, and side pipes, this car not only had a great sound, it fits Sam's macho mystique perfectly. Well, today we're on a deserted highway north of LA that's used a lot by the television and film industry to shoot all those cool driving shots you always see. But I got Mark Christopher here with me. Mark, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
And Mark's really cool, 67 Corvette Stingray Coupe. I love this car, but Mark, this has got a bit of a television pedigree itself, doesn't it?
Right. I worked for the motion picture transportation industry, Teamster Local 399 for 25 years, and I was working Cheers, and the word was going around that they needed a vintage Corvette for Sam Malone. So I said, I got it in the garage. I got Sam's car in my garage. So they brought it down and looked at it and says everything worked. And I says, yeah. They said, okay, we'll use it.
And it became Sam's Vette. Now, it appeared on 2 episodes, right?
Yeah.
But Sam never got to drive it.
No, he was towed. He never got to drive the thing.
Oh, he doesn't know what he's missing.
Oh, he told me about that.
Now, this car is not, you've built this. It's not the way it came off the line, but you've built it to enjoy, to have fun with.
Yeah. Mostly it's the suspension, which is out of Vette Products in Florida. I was over at Palm Springs in 1987 and happened to meet Zora Arkus-Duntov. And I asked him about the suspension kit that they had on display. And he said, when they made this, they surpassed themselves. So I said, sold.
And you got it. So it's a 67 body, but it's got 87 suspension.
Yes, every bit of it.
What a combination.
So it's got leaf springs transversely front and back, bigger sway bars front and back, upper and lower lightweight A-arms, neoprene bushings, Bilstein shocks. No coil springs. They are out of here. They're gone.
All the goodies. All
the goodies.
Like it's glued to the road.
That's it. It's an 87 chassis.
Now, you've kept the interior very stock.
Yeah.
So you've put in some leather seats.
Well, you can't do anything to it. What can you do to a 67 Corvette coupe?
It's beautiful. Close ratio 4-speed?
Oh, yeah. 308 positive traction.
Always liked how they put the radio in there vertical. The only way you could stuff it in there. But I tell you, Larry Shinoda and the boys really had it together when they designed this car. This is about as pretty a design as you're ever going to see.
Oh, they did it all when they put this crease in there.
Isn't that beautiful? Well, under the hood's the big show, though. Open it up. 427 cubic inch, 435 horsepower, 3 2-barrel carburetors. This thing's a monster.
It gets me downtown.
Yeah, it does. Now, you've done some work here, too.
Oh, yeah. I had the engine taken out. It was bored out 20 thousandths, all Chevrolet parts except for roller competition roller rockers, and it's got a crane electronic box.
Now, have you ever had dynoed?
Yeah, I had it roller dynoed to the rear wheels, and I get 325 horsepower.
Wow, so up front, what do you think you're pushing?
Well, you go farther up the power band, and I'm thinking you're getting a little over 500.
Man, I mean, this thing is it's a gorgeous car with stock side pipes on there. This monster engine, it's got a sound just.
Oh yeah, it's nothing like a 427 big block with side pipes.
Absolutely. Well, let's let's take it out on this deserted highway and do some of those television driving shots, and let's hear what this baby sounds like.
Oh, Dennis, I like the way you think.
Close it up.
Let me open the door for you.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Yeah, so once around the park, James.
Oh, I think we've almost twice. Here we go. Hang on.
Now, you've had it for,
what, 15 years?
15 years.
Yeah.
So what drove you to build it?
Well, as I said, I'm a Corvette enthusiast and performance enthusiast. I figure, I'm not like these guys that's got to be stock. They had the power in '67. They never had the suspension. They were close, but the skinny tires, they never had fat tires.
So going with that 87 performance suspension just did the trick.
It's a whole new world.
Holds the road like it's glued to it?
Oh, it's just great. That corner's like you wouldn't believe. It just squats and gets. I see Ted quite frequently because I work Paramount Studios a lot and being a driver in the business, and he was really happy to get it. He's a real nice guy. Ted Danson's a real nice guy.
Oh, Mark, what a blast. This thing is awesome.
Dennis, you know your Corvette.
Sam really missed it when he didn't drive this baby. Hey, do you suppose Cheers is open?
Cheers is always open.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go have a cold one.
Let's do it.
Another of GM's talented designers was David Holls. His design credits included the '59 Cadillac, '66 Buick Riviera, and the 1970 Camaro. He eventually reached the status of executive designer at GM. We featured his life and work in one of our famous pocket documentaries a few years ago.
The minute I understood what I was looking at, a car was the thing that I enjoyed the most. It was really the only profession I ever wanted to be in. I was an automobile designer. I didn't know how you did it then or how you got a job doing that, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. I ended up going to Michigan State in 1948 there, they started a course that they called Industrial Design. When I graduated, I got a job with General Motors, which I was just delighted. My first assignment was Cadillac Studio.
Dave's a good friend of mine, and I love the guy. Plus, he's a very talented designer. I worked with him practically his whole career, my whole career at GM.
It was great fun watching Mr. Earl come in and how he got what he wanted. Mr. Earl wanted to start a special automobile with a Cadillac convertible that had a wraparound windshield like his LeSabre show car. So the first car that I worked on was the '53 Cadillac Eldorado.
Yeah, some of his sketches are wonderful. I still have some of his sketches because he really had a feel for the lines and the flair and the design. Had a lot to do with this, with the Cadillac, for example.
I did a lot in the '58, but the '59 was the one that I influenced the most. I did the majority of that car, especially those big fins. Although I'm most known for that design of that '59 Cadillac, it isn't necessarily the one that I liked the best. The '60 Cadillac I liked more.
He was instrumental in the second generation Riviera, which looks like Holls. It just looks like Holls. It has that fine, well executed, but fast looking.
They were really fun to work on, classy cars. And the other ones that I worked on Chevrolet that I enjoyed were the Corvettes, '63 and the '68s, and those wonderful Camaros. My favorite was the '70 Camaro with the open mouth, the rally sport job. That was a great car. The 1970 Chevelle with a 454 engine. That was nice. Design, for me, has always been a team effort. You relied very heavily on good clay modelers. Same with engineers. Good engineers that worked well with designers were rare. Same thing with general managers, the guys that headed the divisions. It's a team effort, and Bill Mitchell would notice that if you worked well with other people. I was much closer to Bill Mitchell's design philosophy than Harley Earl's. All these young fellows that he had running the studios, we all had some of that feeling. And so I think that's why the designs of the '60s were so much cleaner and more elegant than the designs of the '50s. It's what we really wanted to do. I worked at Opel from 1970 until 1974. I did a second generation Monta, and we started the Opel Senator, which is the first big Opel sedan over there. And maybe the most fun was the Bitter car. It was a beautiful combination. It had a high-performance Chevrolet Corvette engine in it and a DTO independent rear suspension, which was fabulous. When I returned to GM after working at Opel, the most interesting assignment I had was when I was put in charge of all the advanced studios. I tried to do programs down there that eventually could find their way into production. Two of the cars that we were most proud of, and I know Chuck was proud of them, was the Seville and the Aurora.
You can't help but like Dave Holls. He is such a wonderful person, wonderful mind, and a wonderful passion for cars.
A father and son team set out to build a pure stock drag car. They succeeded in doing just that by resurrecting a disassembled, tarp-covered '68 Nova SS 396 that had been stored for 13 years. The finished car is both fast and beautifully built. In fact, I was torque-pinned to my seat several times while we were out cruising around the South Georgia back roads, so I couldn't wait till we got this thing to the strip to see what this sweet little Nova could really do. Well, today we're down in Reynolds, Georgia at the Silver Dollar Raceway with Phil Brewer. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thanks, glad you made it.
And we got a really cute and a really quick '68 Nova.
Exactly.
Man, this thing is sweet. Now, you built this car up from not much.
Yeah, my son and I, we just finished our restoration shop up in Cumming, Georgia. We thought, hey, we need to build our first cars. Need to be something real fast, real nice. And we're bow tie guys, so here it is.
This is it. This is the car. Now you were telling me you found this thing in boxes, right?
It was totally disassembled, and it had been in storage for at least 13 years, covered up with a tarp, paint was all chipped and cracked.
So you had to bring it all back together, and you really built this thing to go racing.
Exactly. Have fun, drive it on the street, and race it.
Well, you picked a nice year. I mean, the 68 was the body change year. It was a real pretty car. Looked like a shrunken Chevelle. Now, the interior had some unique things to 68, right?
Yeah, just like the seats and the steering wheel, they're same as the Chevelle. And the console and shifter, they're same as the Camaro.
Looks Camaro.
Yeah,
now, that Gage package on the Camaro was white face. The Novas would have been black face.
Yeah, we couldn't find the black, so we had to go with the white.
I'm not surprised. I bet they're real rare. Now, you also, how about that dash?
Right here, your SS. That's unique just to this year only.
Okay. Now, there was some outside badging.
SS down here, too.
Yeah, the Super Sport down along the bottom.
That's
that was
unique 68
only 68. Now, the hood was the typical SS hood and could have come with any of the larger engines.
Right, 350 or
396. And up front, this was the last year they were called Chevy 2.
Exactly, they were all Novas after that.
So that was gone in 69.
Exactly.
Now, this was a big year for the Nova. They made like 200,000 of these, most powered by the 236.
Exactly.
But not this one.
No, not at all. 396, 375 horse L78 car.
Wow. But then you didn't stop there, did you?
No. We had a set of these aluminum heads and we were lighting up the front end, so we cloned it over to an L89 car.
Wow. So now this could have been ordered right off the factory.
Exactly.
Right this way. They didn't make many of them if they made any of them. But this car cloned is all correct date coded.
Everything's date coded in 68.
And that's so that you could go pure stock muscle car drag racing.
Carburetor, intake heads, manifolds, distributor, everything's date coded.
Now this was a car that back in those days you'd drive it to the racetrack, you'd drag race it, you'd drive it home.
Then the wife could go get groceries.
Go get groceries. Well, I don't want to get any groceries, but let's do some of these things. Let's take it out for a drive and then come back and run it down this strip.
Let's go.
All right. Yeah, it's a cute little car.
Thanks, we love it.
Oh, yeah. That's no 230 inline 6.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. I was pushed back into my seat several times while we were out cruising around the South Georgia back roads. I couldn't wait until we got to the strip to see what this sweet little Nova could really do. Oh yeah, that's what it's all about. It really jumps up there, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, wait till we get to the racetrack with it. When it starts sticking, it'll stick on the track.
Said that this was actually a bench seat 4-speed.
Yeah, originally it was. It was a bench seat 4-speed car with a custom interior. SS.
But the color was originally the grotto blue.
Exactly, it's original color, which is unique too. It's only 1 year. It's a 68.
They did that a lot back then.
Exactly.
It made it tough to match.
Yeah, there was a lot of beautiful 68s. So Impalas had it, Camaros, and a few Novas.
All right, Phil, we're going to warm them up. We're going to take it down the track. Only rule, don't kill the hose.
All right.
Yeehaw. After Phil and I blasted down the track, his son, Phil Jr., who usually races the car, wanted his turn to post some times. Now it was time for some good old friendly family competition. Dad drove the 68 Nova, and his son challenged in a hopped-up 69 Camaro. Let the games begin. You guys are having too much fun here. I tell you build some fast cars. Phil?
Yeah.
Phil, man, these are sweet
Thanks.
cars. I don't know if I had to pick, I don't know which one I'd take. I like them both. What's your favorite?
How
about yours? Well, you know. In April of 2000, the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky held the 3rd annual birthday bash for arguably the best vet yet, the C5. Participating in this celebration was C5 Chief Engineer Dave Hill and the Chief Designer of the C5, John Camaro. We sat down with both these guys for a more in-depth look at the C5 Corvette.
I haven't looked back since I started in December '92. It's a very daunting assignment because people have such high expectations for a Corvette. The 5th generation Corvette was more new than any Corvette ever, including the original one. It enabled a lot of really exciting technologies to come together that took a great deal of time, but it also took a great deal of perseverance. And I give a lot of credit to Dave and the C5 engineers that worked in those difficult times in the late 80s and the early 90s, because now we've got a really remarkable Corvette.
The C5 has 4 times the structural rigidity of the C4, due mainly to the hydroformed frame.
The thing that's remarkable about the Corvette hydroforming is the size of the thing, because literally the entire length of the car is one hydroformed piece, and it's the largest hydroformed piece in the world. And was developed to enable the simplification and manufacturing cost effectiveness that I spoke of, but also a tremendous amount of structural efficiency, because with no seams and no welded joints and no hinge points, that one rail is able to handle a great deal of the structural loads for ride and handling, also the structural loads for crashworthiness, and deliver a very powerful structure, a very rigid structure, a very strong structure, but do so with a very simple construction. There's a tremendous synergy in the architecture of the car. The central backbone that withstands the torsional twist that is such a challenge for open car. That tunnel is enabled by moving the transmission to the rear and getting a very smooth load path between the front of the tunnel and the rear of the tunnel.
Dave maintained the heritage of previous vets by staying with a 5.7-liter pushrod V8, a decision that some power enthusiasts may consider an old approach.
The small block Chevy is reintroduced with the 3rd generation. The pushrod layout, the 2 valves per cylinder, might seem by some to be kind of a backward design, but it's actually a very successful formula because it enables the engine to be no more complicated than necessary, relatively few parts, few moving parts. That reduces the friction, increases the efficiency, the power output. You know, the Corvette has 1/3 fewer parts than its predecessor did, is an example of how people could work in a team setting to try to figure out how to do something much simpler and much better. So that kind of enables that wonderful affordability that's really special about the Corvette.
Dave's partner in the creation of the C5 was John Camaro, Corvette Chief Designer. John gave credit to Dave Hill for much of the C5's breakthrough technology.
I think Dave Hill really recognized the use of different materials, new materials. For instance, the balsa floor. He gave us the tools to really give the car the right proportion and stance. He completely redesigned the intake plenum so we can get the low sight lines of a mid-engine car. To get the load floor in the rear compartment, Dave developed the split fuel tank for mass production in the Corvette. A lot of people would have balked at that, but Dave and his team were up to the challenge. So there are a lot of engineering enablers.
John's design team was able to produce the C5 with the lowest drag coefficient of any Corvette. This was accomplished with many grueling hours in the wind tunnel.
We spent a lot of time on the C5 in the wind tunnel and lived there late nights. Not a very friendly environment, especially in the wintertime because the air is not really heated, temperature controlled, so it gets kind of cold. But I think it was the first car that we had done at GM where we had two full-size models going at the same time. We had a model that mirrored our master production model that would live in the wind tunnel. Then we'd bring that model back, we'd take templates off it or scan it and put those in the production model. And we really had to think out of the box with some of the surfaces that we're getting in the wind tunnel, and we kind of took our hats and changed them to a more race car mentality as we approached the design of the C5. The plan views, the shapes around the wheel openings are all patterned after sports prototype racers. This car, I think, was really the last of the kind of done by hand. You know, I really give my chief sculptor a lot of credit, Claudio Bertolini, who's an Italian sculptor. He led the sculpting team, and he really gave the car the kind of surface attention that was required to be successful. You know, this is a car that you love to wash, you know, and he really brought that kind of hand artisan emotion to the surfaces. I used to go home with my shoes about an inch of clay on them every night, and you don't see much of that anymore. And I'm not saying that I miss it, but it was good to be part of a program that was maybe last of the romantic ways of doing business.
These current-day legends truly believe in the C5's performance and style. It's hard for them to hide their passion for the car.
This has been my lifelong dream as a kid. You know, like any kid, I dreamed of flying fighter jets or being a sports guy, you know, playing for the Yankees and things like that. But this is it. I think the Corvette design game is the ultimate game played in the design business in America and around the world.
Yeah, it's been a great ride. And it's a wonderful team, this Corvette team, and the General Motors organization that supports it. I've got a great honor of being involved in it, and we've got folks who are determined to do their very, very best.
Don Yenko was a Chevy dealer in Pennsylvania during the 60s and 70s. Not only was he a true motorhead, he was a very astute businessman. That's why out of a small-town dealership came some of the finest cars of the muscle car era. Don Yenko juiced up everything from Corvettes to Camaros. His story has always fascinated me, probably because I was coming of age when his cars were dominating the streets.
Don Yenko was a Chevrolet dealer in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, who was a very, very astute businessman.
Very successful racer, Chevy man through and through, raced Corvettes, raced Corvairs.
His two great loves in life were playing jazz piano and flying an airplane. Out of his small Chevrolet dealership in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, came some of the finest cars of the muscle car era.
Don Yenko's earliest project was the Corvair Stinger in 1965. He built those in 65 and 66. And various modifications made these little Corvairs race-ready rockets.
Matter of fact, some of those still run to race today in SCCA across the country and still winning. And they were a good car. I mean, it was the beginning of that genre of car.
And then in '67, he started transplanting 427 engines into Camaros.
Yenko Camaro production was always very limited. Early cars in the 50 to 60 range in '67 and '68. Of course, the big controversy involves the 1969 production when Yenko Chevrolet began using the COPO pipeline, the central office production order option, to actually order factory-equipped 427 Camaros to be delivered, and there they were converted into Yenko Supercars with all their tape stripes and various emblems. Over the years, there's been this ongoing battle as to how many were actually built.
Perhaps the original tape from my interview with Don Yenko will shed some light on whether or not there were 201 or 500. This is Don Yenko speaking.
In 1968, we did our transplants. 1969, all the cars were Copos, there were 500 of them.
In 1969, Yenko started also offering 427 Chevelles and briefly offered 427 Novas.
For 1970, entrepreneur that Don was, visionary that he was, he saw a loophole in what was going on The insurance industry was trying everything it could to kill the muscle car, especially big block muscle cars. So Don talked with the factory, and he had Chevrolet install the LT1 Corvette engine in a mundane little Nova, Chevy 2 if you will. And when you bought that car, you went to your insurance agent and said, I just bought a Nova with a 350, and your insurance agent smiled and patted you on the back for being a good citizen and wrote you the standard rate. In later years, he built Stinger Vegas, some with turbochargers, some without. But that was about the last project car that he was really involved in. At Don's funeral, during the service at the funeral home, which I attended immediately after his death, everyone sat there and listened to a 20-minute tape of Don Yenko playing jazz piano as per his last will and testament. That was one of the things that he mandated in his will.
The out-and-out Camaro that you always remember is the Yenko Camaro, and if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't remember that car. The Camaro would be popular, it would be known, but the Yenko Camaro was the one on the cover of CarCraft, it was the one on the cover of Hot Rod. That was the car that you remember. That's the car everybody wants.
The rivalry between the Boss 302 Mustang and the Z28 Camaro is one of the most colorful in the history of Ford versus Chevy. Not only did they compete for customers, they competed for the checkered flag as well. The street versions of these small block screamers continue to appreciate because of their performance, aggressive looks, and SCCA Trans Am racing history. Like any great duo, each would not have achieved this level of popularity without the other. What really makes these cars unique is their racing history. Each won the prestigious Trans Am Championship when factory support was at its peak. The Z28 in 1968 and 69 and the Boss 302 in 1970. We spent a beautiful autumn weekend at Road Atlanta during the SVRA's Atlanta Vintage Grand Prix and Trans Am Reunion to take an up-close look at these two legendary race cars. This three-day event is just one of a growing number of vintage events held across the country.
Well, Glory Days is a tour of the historic Trans Am cars from the late 60s and early 70s. It's organized by Historic Auto Racing Events Incorporated in conjunction with the SVRA, and we're back here to recreate the feeling of the late 60s and early 70s.
Driving in the Trans Am cars in those days was very much more seat of the pants, and I guess the cars were, one of the reasons it was so good is that all the cars were so competitive, you know, and all of the manufacturers were interested because this meant big sales for all of them.
For our look at a Boss 302, we chose this car, a 70 Boss built by Bud Moore as a backup during Ford's 70 championship season. The car was actually driven during the 71 season by Peter Gregg. The Z28 parked in the garage next door is a Roger Penske car driven by none other than Mark Donohue when he won the 69 Trans Am Championship. Both cars have been restored to their original race condition. We asked their current owners, Ken Epsman and Fred Galloway, how they became interested in owning a piece of Trans Am history.
Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to have a 1968 Shelby GT500 convertible. I eventually got one. I took it to an open track event at Sears Point Raceway in 1984 and was hooked ever since.
How about you, Fred?
Started street racing and quit during college, and when I got out of college, I met a couple of fellows that introduced me to vintage racing and went to the track and got completely hooked. Now I got to own it.
I asked Fred to explain some of the Penske Z28's unique features that helped Donohue win the 69 championship. He started under the hood with Chevrolet's famous cross-ram manifold and dual four-barrel carbs. This combination gave the Z28 a slight horsepower advantage over the Boss 302 during the 69 season. Fred then pointed out two very clever Penske innovations.
Fueling system was very unique. They had a large tower that the fuel came down, they put dry ice in it to cool it so you could get basically 24 gallons of fuel in a 22-gallon fuel cell. They would come in and hit this door and fill it, and the gas would blow in. An interesting thing is when you look underneath, you can see that the filler actually will hold another 4 gallons.
Amazing.
So they could get quite a bit of gas in a very short time. They were getting about 24 gallons of fuel in 3.2 seconds.
That's pretty clever.
So it made a very, very fast pit stop for them for gas. The changes that they made to the business office and that was for the oil. They could add oil in here through a pressurized can that they just gave to Donahue, so he was able to add oil during the pit stop.
So he was part of the pit crew too?
Correct. They also had switches that if somebody followed Donahue repeatedly too close into a corner, he could turn off his lights. and they would never know where his braking point was.
Bit of an unfair advantage, but...
Ken then showed me a couple of the unique features on his Bud Moore prepared Boss 302. The flares on the fenders were enlarged a half an inch, and the inner fender wheel wells were moved in 3 inches to make room for larger tires. A huge chin spoiler was added for downforce. The Boss 302 was one of the first Trans Am cars to take advantage of aerodynamic aids. Ken then lifted the hood and showed me a major reason Ford won the '70 championship.
Well, this motor differed mainly with this mini plenum intake system. This is a single 4-barrel, but this air was forced in through this pipe, and it pressurized inside the air, basically the air cleaner area, and it forced the air, and so basically like a supercharger with no belts.
Squeeze out a few more horsepower.
That's right.
After our close-up look at the cars, we asked Fred and Ken if they'd take the 2 Trans Am champions out on the track so we could photograph them. They jumped at the chance to have Road Atlanta's 2.5 miles of scenic beauty to themselves. Thanks, guys, for the awesome sight of brilliantly painted sheet metal flashing by. And the sweet sound of screaming V8s echoing through the trees.
Dave Weary is the proud owner of this pristine 1955 Chevy Bel Air. It's had a frame-off restoration that was completed in only 4.5 months. As you may have guessed, this car has won numerous awards. However, Dave said his biggest reward has been the friends he's made along the way and the smiles this car puts on people's faces. We caught up with Dave one sunny afternoon in northern Ohio. Well, today we're in Norwalk, Ohio, and as you might hear, just a stone's throw from Norwalk Raceway. But I'm with Dave Weary. Dave, welcome to the show.
Dennis, thank you.
And this gorgeous 55 Chev Bel Air. This is a beautiful car, Dave. Nice job on it, and quite a revolutionary change from the earlier 50s Chevs.
Yes, Dennis, there's many changes on the 55. You had the 8-crate grille and a lot of stainless here with the Bel Air package.
Now, a lot of them, this is a Bel Air, which was the top of the line. They went 150, 210, and then the Bel Air, which was, that was the car to have.
Top of the line.
Yeah. Two-tone paint job, Neptune green,
mm-hmm.
and
Shoreline beige.
Oh, isn't that nice? Yes. Well, there were all sorts of things that came with the Bel Air package. I guess the beautiful wheel covers.
Full wheel covers.
With the little bow ties. I like that. Very nice.
And then you had the factory option with the stone guards and the
Mm-hmm.
rocker panel molding. You had it was an option with the nail guards.
Oh, at the handle, so you can
Yes.
scratch it up. And I guess all the stainless trim. And this is all stainless, not chrome, right?
Exactly. Polishes up very nicely.
And how about the paint in the spear?
That was just your basic white was in the spear.
Now the back windows only went this far down,
Yes.
right? Isn't that interesting? And in 55, you still fueled at the rear quarter.
Correct.
Your fuel door, but this was an option, the trim, right? Yes?
Correct. This was an option you could put on any 55.
And then how about the skirts?
Skirts, factory option.
Now this is a V8 car, I can tell.
Yes.
Because it's got this kind of subtle symbol here. That was the only V8 designation though, right?
Correct. First year for the V8, so they wanted to distinguish it some way, and they put the little emblems under each taillight.
But it's only a single exhaust car.
Correct. It only has a 2-barrel, Dennis, so they went with the single exhaust on the 2-barrel, dual exhaust on the 4-barrel, and they put the gas line on the outside of the frame rail.
So actually different between 2-barrel and 4-barrel, huh?
Correct.
Well, can you pop the trunk? I'd
Sure.
love to have a look at that 55 trunk. Oh, you even got your BF Goodrich Silvertown there.
Right down to it. It's
Boy.
correct in every way.
And the mat too, that's a rubber mat or something?
Correct. Rubber mat for 55 in the trunk. Then your jack stored beside your spare with your instructions on the side.
Well, close it up. Let's have a look at the interior. Because with Bel Air, you also got an upgrade in the interior, right?
Correct. You got what they called an imitation leather, Dennis, with the deluxe fabric here. This had the factory push-button radio and the electric over wind-up clock.
Oh, the one that would buzz at you every once in a while?
Yes.
Did its trick?
Correct. And then on the Bel Air, you had the molded-in armrests on the front, standard armrests in the back on the sedan.
Now that silver piece, is that a tissue dispenser?
Yes, it is, Dennis. It tilts out for convenience.
Oh, isn't that nice? All the comforts. Well, first year for the V8, 265, right?
Correct.
Let's have a look at it.
All right.
Oh, that's beautiful. I bet that engine created quite a stir when it hit the market, didn't it?
Yes, it did. That changed the whole industry. This engine has no oil filter, Dennis. 55, they did not put it on.
You just have to change the oil?
Right. It was a factory option. You could get a 6-cylinder oil filter, which mounted up here underneath your housing here, but it was messy to change.
Yeah, I bet. Now, you were saying that there's an awful lot of original components on here that you wouldn't expect. This generator is original to the car.
All the components on the engine are original to the car, Dennis. They were all made between November 1st and November 14th of 1954.
So things like the generator, the start, what else?
Water pump.
The water pump's original?
Carburetor.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now this is beautiful. I mean, the restoration is so meticulous. I mean, are you a hardcore original guy?
No, Dennis, I'm a hot rodder at heart. A friend of mine had this car, and it was agreed upon when I purchased the car that I would put it back to original.
Must have taken some restraint.
Yes, it did. Very much so.
But it's beautiful, and did your friend get to see it when it was done?
He put the first mile on it with me.
Is that right?
Yes. It was an emotional day. It was nice because we trailered it down. In fact, we didn't even want to drive it that day. We trailered it down, and he came out of the house, and we surprised him and went for a ride.
That must have been a special day.
It was.
Wow. Well, you know, this is a special day.
Yes.
We're here. It's beautiful. Let's go for a ride.
Let's go.
All right.
The Ohio countryside was the perfect place to take this award-winning Chevy for a drive.
Now, you know, when you were tearing this thing apart, I mean, did you find all the codes? And I mean, had this thing been hacked on or not?
Dennis, it's all original to the car. When we took the body off the frame, there was some information that I read about a serial number of the car being right underneath the floorboard on the driver's side. So as we took the steel wool and the aircraft stripper, we were stripping the frame down. I found the serial number, and then a foot back from it, I found it again, and it was as legible as the day it was made.
And it all matches the numbers up?
All matches the number on the pillar on the driver's side.
So you took this whole thing down by hand?
By hand. Aircraft stripper and steel wool. Every piece.
That's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
Did you rebuild the engine?
Yes, I did. I took the engine home from the shop. 55 has a special cam in it. It has a special lobe on the rear for the oiling's different on the 55. I ordered a new cam, put a new cam and lifters in it, timing chain. I mic'd everything, and it had been bored 40 over at one time. There's so much literature today on the 55, 56, 57 Chevy, and so many parts available that it almost makes it a pleasure to do them.
So then you took it in pieces, more or less, and then launched into this this labor of love restoration.
4.5 months.
That's awfully fast.
Yes, it is. That's vacations, weekends, holidays, and an understanding spouse.
As you may have guessed, this car has won numerous awards. However, Dave says the biggest reward has been the friends he's made along the way and the smiles this car puts on people's faces. With our mini trips around the country, I've had the pleasure of meeting some great car people. Such is the case with Don Clark down in Lucas, Texas. Don has a garage anyone would be envious of, especially since it houses both a '69 Copo Camaro and a '69 Yenko Camaro. I spent a warm November morning with Don checking out his cool garage and awesome cars.
Well, today we're in Lucas, Texas with Don Clark. Don, welcome to the show.
And welcome back to Texas,
Oh,
Dennis.
it's great to be here, I tell you. Now, Don's got a lot of really cool toys, all of them sporting Chevy power plants, most of them pretty big. Can we go inside and have a look?
Let's do it.
All right. Ooh, Don, nice place you got here.
Thanks, Dennis.
Nice toys, too. 67 427 Vet. This is gorgeous. I mean, this looks like a brand new car, and I see an NCRS sticker on it.
Restored about 7 years ago by the previous owner in Connecticut, Dennis.
A Duntov car?
Yes.
And window sticker, $6,007.90. Would you sell that to me for that today?
My wife probably would.
But I can forget it, right? Now, this is another favorite of mine, the 56 Nomad. This is just beautiful, and you've done a nice job on this. You got a pretty stock look to it, but you got the 60s looking wheels. Love your interior. But I gotta believe, I know you too well, that's not a stock engine under there.
It's a 350 with a bit of a cam.
Oh, nice color combo, too.
Sierra Gold, Adobe Beige highlights.
Wow. Now, is this one that goes out?
Every weekend.
Wow. Yeah, you know, this has got to be a crowd pleaser. Fun cruiser, I'll bet. Now, this looks like a Ford, but I bet there's a Chevy.
Another 350.
Of course, of course. Very nice looking little cruiser, another weekend toy?
Yes.
Yeah. But this one looks very special.
This car is unique, Dennis. It's number 9 of 69 ZL1 Camaros built by Chevrolet in 1969.
So this was the Copo, right?
That's right.
The central office production order car. They sort of almost snuck these out without management looking, didn't they?
Well, Fred Gibb convinced Chevrolet to build these cars. He ordered 50, thinking that the engine option was going to be about $400. It came back at about 10 times that. He ended up only selling a handful of these, and most of the rest of the cars went back to Chevrolet.
So it's an all aluminum 427.
Correct.
Wow. Now, I mean, there's virtually no options on this car. It's just a base car except for that one big option.
That's right.
And that ran the bill up. The base price on this would have been what?
A little under 3 with that engine, a little over 7.
That's one pricey option, but I bet they go. Now, I can't believe you drive this baby too much because it's so rare.
That's right.
Yeah. But you've got another 69 Camaro that I'm interested in. You got a 69 Yenko. Can we go look at that?
Sure, let's go.
All right. Oh, yeah, sure. Yes, there it is. 69 Yenko Camaro SC. Supercar?
Super Camaro.
Super Camaro. Well, this is beautiful. Now, Don Yenko built these. He was out of Pennsylvania somewhere, right?
Cannonsburg, PA.
Cannonsburg, and started out doing Corvettes.
That's correct.
The Stinger.
The Stinger.
He made these 3 years, 67, 68, 69. This is a 69. What were the differences between those 3 years?
Well, in 67 and 68, Don Yenko got 396 cars from the factory and transplanted a 427. In 69, he convinced the factory to do the installation for him, and the cars came to his dealership basically like this, without the striping and the badging.
Wow, so I mean, he in 67 and 8, I mean, he really turned these into something special, something that wasn't out there.
That's right.
But then he bought these almost as a package in 69, and all he did was stripe it, and that's a good deal for him, isn't it?
It was a great deal.
So what all sets a Yenko apart? Certainly the striping, and I guess the badging on the seats.
Basically just a tachometer. Now, some cars, I believe, came with an Atlas-designed 5-spoke magnesium wheel and headers.
Now, this is a 4-speed. They also came in automatics?
They did.
And what is the trend? Is it a rock crusher?
It's an M21.
M21. So a little bit less noisy, but still can handle the power, huh?
It can do it.
But of course, the big deal in these was the 427. Let's have a look at that. Oh yeah. 427, 450 horse. Now, do you think that's a real 450?
I believe it is, Dennis. Solid lifter, same engine that they used in the Corvettes of that era.
So just like, you know, the Copos that came out, those few that came out, like the other one you've got, I mean, these were really just made to go really fast for a quarter mile. Huh?
That's correct.
Boy, God, now this one, does it run nice?
It runs very nice.
Very nice, very nice.
Seldom, but nice.
Seldom, but you know, today would be a perfect day to add to that seldom.
I believe it would, Dennis.
All right, well, let's button it up and go burn some Texas asphalt. What do you say?
Okay.
So how many Camaros do you have? You got this, you got the Copo.
And a Z28.
And a Z28. So when you're looking for a car, I mean, what is, you know, is it you just get a hankering for something and you go after it, or?
Yes.
That's simple, huh?
And the resale is not an issue.
And how long did it take you to start amassing cars, or, you know, I mean, is this a long-standing disease you have?
It took me a long time to earn the money to be able to buy the other cars that I wanted. My collection didn't begin until probably mid-'80s.
And what drove you to have something as rare as that 69 Copo?
The ZL1, just because it is rare. It's a very unique automobile.
And is that some of what drives your interest, just the novelty of something or the rarity of it?
Yes.
Very nice. Want to ride, Don? These are great cars. I love them. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dennis. Enjoyed having you.
Oh, it's great being here. You got so many good toys. We need to play some more with something. Want to play now?
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's our look back at the legendary Chevys we've had the honor of taping over the years. Our thanks to all the people who appeared in this video for sharing their piece of bow tie history with us. You know, all this talk about high-power Chevys does have me itching to do some driving, though. So until our next meeting, remember, honor the timeless Chevys. I'm Dennis Gage. Happy motoring.